So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Charlene to tell us a little bit more about upskilling and reskilling.
Thanks, Jana, and thanks everyone for listening in today. I'm really excited about this conversation because I think that there are a lot of there are lots of people kind of tossing out the terms upskilling and reskilling, but I find for me sometimes I'm guilty of using these terms interchangeably, and they're really not interchangeable terms. So when I'm faced with a challenge, one of the things that I like to do is sort of break it down into a definition, and that's where we're going to start today. Let's start with upskilling. Upskilling is about giving employees new skills to help them excel in their current role. An example might be um, learning a new piece of software. As Jana and I were putting our notes together and we were talking about, different stories that we've been exposed to regarding upskilling and reskilling, Jana was sharing a story with me yesterday where she took a class to learn more about SEO. And so, search engine optimization. So the idea is that maybe as an employee, we take a class or we learn about a particular thing that will help us do our jobs better. Another example would be a certification. So, for example, I recently got a specialty credential in people analytics. That's an example of learning about something new and getting a certification in that area to help me excel in my current role. Now, upskilling is a little bit different than reskilling. And when I think of reskilling, I sort of think of two different examples. The first one being when we provide someone skills for a future role, but maybe the context of their job doesn't change. So, for example, there are companies out there now who talk about delivery drivers not driving vans anymore, but what they're doing is they're using a drone to make that delivery. Still delivering stuff, but the way that they're going about doing it is a little bit different. Now, the other way that reskilling can take place would be if you completely change jobs. So maybe you're doing one kind of role in the organization and now you're going to move to something different. A great case study, if you're looking for a good case study regarding reskilling, there's one on Harvard Business Review that involves AT&T. Some of you might not remember this, but AT&T at one point in time used to be the telephone company. And at some point in time, AT&T decided that in their strategic business plan, they were going to transform from being the telephone company to being a global telecommunications, digital conglomerate that they are. But they had all of these employees who had the job title telephone operator. And as a human resources professional, I know that there are many different ways that an organization can deal with that kind of situation. They might decide that at the point in time, they don't need telephone operators anymore, that they're going to transition those individuals out of the organization, or they might allow attrition. When people leave, they just simply don't replace them. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to hear the CEO of AT&T talk about how they went about this transition in their talent. And what they did is they created training programs, millions of dollars in training programs to help individuals learn the competencies that they were going to need for future positions. This was an interesting aspect to the AT&T story. While AT&T knew where they were right now and where they wanted to be, they weren't ready to create job descriptions for these new positions that they were transitioning towards, but they knew the competencies that they needed to have. So what AT&T did is they created programs, training programs, that allowed employees to master the skills that they were going to need for the future. And at the point in time that they were ready to post job openings, they would say this particular job opening needs someone who has mastery in these particular skills. I guess you could think of it sort of like merit badges. You know, you need to have these 3 merit badges in order to apply for that job. And you need to have these 5 merit badges in order to apply for that job. So what was really interesting about the AT&T case study to me is this is an opportunity of reskilling, and reskilling where the employee was in control of their future career. So when we're thinking about reskilling, we don't necessarily have to say to an employee, tomorrow afternoon, you're not going to do this job anymore. You're going to do that one. We can put employees in a position where we say, these are the opportunities of the future. These are the competencies or the skills that we think you're going to need in the future. And let employees decide the things that they want to learn and the things that they want to participate in, with the idea that the employee will have the skills at the time that the organization is ready to start filling those positions. And I think that's a great takeaway when it comes to the AT&T case study, but it's a great takeaway for us to keep in mind as we start to think about the learning opportunities involved with upskilling and reskilling. So now that we know what upskilling and reskilling are, let's talk about why we might want to do it as an organization. I like to think of 3 different dynamics going on that organizations are facing right now, or they could be facing in the future, that align with upskilling and reskilling. The first one has to do with technology. We have all seen over the course of the past year, year and a half, that organizations have become much more reliant on technology, especially if you have employees who are spending any time working remotely. But what's interesting to me is how technology has accelerated. I mean, we knew that we're spending more time using technology and we're relying on it more, but there was a report by McKinsey that said the pandemic has accelerated digital technology by 7 years. And that was sort of mind blowing to me, because if you, I talked to some CEOs over the, course of time, recent time with the pandemic, who said, we thought we were on top of our tech game. We thought we had everything that the organization needed to have, and that we were really ahead of where everybody needed to be. And we realized how behind we really were. So as we're thinking about upskilling and reskilling, we want to factor in the technology component. The second, go ahead, Jana.
Just going to jump in really quick on that, Charlene, is something that really we were kind of discussing yesterday and talking about around technology as well, and I think applies to the AT&T case study very well, is with this digital transformation, as automation and technology and tools come into place. I think a lot of people are concerned, automation is going to take my job. It's going to become a redundancy. This computer or robot can now do my job. But there's a really interesting statistic from the World Economic Forum that estimates, 85 million jobs will be lost due to automation and technology, which can be a really scary number when you think about it. On the flip side, that 97 million new jobs with new skills will be created to be able to support these new tools and technologies and this evolution and innovation that's coming through. So if you think about it, there's actually going to be over 12 million more jobs created than are lost. So there's going to be a pretty significant gap in the talent shortage needed to fill that in technology. So it makes a really strong case for reskilling, is thinking about the employees that, very similar to AT&T, maybe their roles are trending out or becoming more automated, that there's going to be so many more opportunities for them with more technical or new skills to be able to fill those gaps.
I think it's an excellent point. And the third consideration about shifting demographics, I'm immediately thinking about that as you're talking about the different jobs that are going to be created. One of the things that we saw prior to the pandemic was there are more people exiting the workforce or have the potential to exit the workforce than people entering the workforce. So the millennial age group, there are fewer young professionals coming into the workplace than there are older professionals exiting. And that's going to create an interesting dynamic when we're talking about skills and work, because we might have fewer people and we might need to create new work models to accommodate that changing face of work. And it kind of leads to the bullet in the middle when we're talking about remote, because is it possible that when we think about redesigning work, or we're talking about the future of work, that we want to keep in mind that employees could potentially be more productive if they're given the flexibility of working wherever it is that they can get the job done. And I understand some organizations are very pro having everyone in the same place. But there is something to be said about the hybrid work model where employees get to decide where they want to spend their time, because they know better. If you and I are working on a project, we can both go into the office, work together, work on the project, and maybe the next day we don't need to be in the office together. So we can both go to our, wherever it is that we want to work then. But that whole letting the employee decide where they want to get the work done is a real interesting dynamic. And I think it plays into upskilling and reskilling and how organizations are going to allow employees to get work done.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think the pandemic has been quite a forcing function in almost the entire workforce, having to upskill in some ways and maybe learn new communication tools that their role hadn't necessarily leveraged before. If I know, I think about it even just in my personal life, my parents and social interactions happening over Zoom, whereas it was very much more of a sales tool or customer service tool before. It seems like everybody is kind of becoming an expert in Zoom and Slack and all these different communication tools that we use to work remotely.
Well, I think that one of the things that we can remember right now is, while the pandemic has heightened our awareness of some of these issues, that doesn't mean that we should view them as solutions to something pandemic related. Upskilling and reskilling is a topic that we were starting to talk about a lot prior to the pandemic, and we're going to continue to talk about it. I think it's just really been heightened because of what's been happening the past year, year and a half. So let's use this as an opportunity to dive into our first topic, upskilling, and some learning approaches that we might want to use if we are thinking about upskilling employees. And maybe we could actually, let me kind of give you a high-level overview of the ones we're going to talk about, and then maybe we can do a poll. Under upskilling, let's discuss apprenticeships, microlearning, educational partnerships, some self-directed learning, as well as I want to spend some time talking about buddies and coaches. To launch the conversation, let's do a poll, Jana, and about apprenticeships. It's interesting. First of all, I'd love to know if your company has an apprenticeship program. You can answer yes, and it's been valuable. Yes, but you have a program that you'd like to see better results. No, but you're considering it. Or maybe no, you don't think that it's a good fit for your company or your industry. And while you're answering the poll, I have to say, I'm seeing an increasing number of articles where organizations are attributing higher employee morale, better employee retention, better delivery of products and services to the fact that the organization does have some sort of apprenticeship program.
All right, and we're just gonna give it a few more seconds. Almost everybody's responded. And 3, 2, 1, some really interesting results here. So I'll go ahead and share those with everybody.
Awesome. I think it's great. Now, I do have to say, let's go ahead and start talking about apprenticeships. The majority of people have said that they're considering an apprenticeship. I know at one point in time when we thought about an apprenticeship, we were thinking of something that traditionally might have been used in the trades like construction, plumbing, electrical. However, there are new roles that we might not have thought about in the past that are getting apprenticeships or being very open to apprenticeships. I used to work in the hotel industry, so it was fascinating to me to think that the culinary arts were having apprenticeships. I'm also hearing about technology positions that might be open to apprenticeships. The idea of an apprenticeship is to offer employees the ability to work and get training at the same time. It's a little bit different than an internship that typically an internship is where someone is working and they're gaining experience at the same time. An apprenticeship is really focused on training. This is something that we can use internally to help employees gain a skill. This is also something that we could use to bring an individual into the organization that maybe doesn't have all the prerequisites, and they can learn while they're working and possibly move into a different role with the company. The second area we want to talk about is micro-learning. And micro-learning has been around for a while. Informally, we are all familiar with micro-learning, but you know, some of us might refer to it by the brand name YouTube.
I am a huge fan of micro learning as a manager as well. It's we so just share a quick little rule on the team is usually if you don't know how to do something, it's about respecting other people's time and trying to self-enable as much as possible. So if you don't know how to do something, Google it first, see if you can find a YouTube video, and then if you can't, go ahead and ask somebody.
Well, and the thing that I like about the micro-learning is, so micro-learning is that short, snackable video that tells you how to do something. You know, as we were preparing for today, I was telling Jana this story where I like to cook, and one of my goals in life is to learn how to roast the perfect chicken. And in order to do that, you have to truss a chicken. That's where you take, cooking twine and you tie it up so that it's beautiful when it comes out of the oven. Well, I didn't know how to truss a chicken, but you can go to the internet and say how to truss a chicken, and you'll get a 90-second video, and you can watch it like one time, two times, and you know how to do it. Micro learning is that kind of concept. It's short, it's easy to consume, just in time when I need it to tell me what I need to do and keep it moving forward. It's something that is easily shareable. So Jana sees something and says, Charlene, you need to watch this. She can shoot that over to me and I can watch it at my convenience. If Jana is my manager, she can put together a group of videos that talk about a particular subject and leave them there for the team, and the team can consume them when it makes sense for them. Not only can microlearning be valuable as a training tool, it can also be a great refresher tool. So you can create short videos as reminders for individuals about things that they need to do. And what's great about the concept of microlearning is we all have a video camera sitting next to us right now. I'm pretty confident that you have a phone that shoots video, and it's usually high production, high definition video. So it's pretty easy to do on your own. I love the concept of microlearning from the standpoint of things like, from a recruiting standpoint. I know that, let's say, managers who have enjoyed a relatively low turnover workforce maybe now are being faced with a situation where they're going to have to do some recruiting, and they haven't had to recruit for a long time. And HR does not want to do interview skills training. Maybe you just did it, maybe you don't have enough people for it, but this is one of those moments where we can create a short 5-minute video offering managers some reminders about interviewing that they can go out and watch right before they have an interview and do a good job. I will tell you, just from a personal standpoint, I've had managers come to me and say, Charlene, I haven't had to interview in the last 9 months, and I'm now going to have to start interviewing someone, for an open role in my company, in my department. And I don't I would love a refresher, but I'm hesitant to go to HR because I don't want them to think that I didn't pay attention during interview skills training. So microlearning, these snackable pieces, can be a great way for us as human resources professionals to build a bond again with managers on topics that maybe they haven't had to deal with, or they haven't had to do for a long time. Now, while we're talking about forms of training, employees can also go to educational events. They can use an in-house program. They can go to a conference or a seminar. They can attend a webinar like we have today. There's one other thing that I want to talk about, because I don't believe enough organizations take advantage of it, and it's called a MOOC, a massively open online course. And you can find these in places like edX and Coursera. A lot of times they are conducted by big universities. I took a course recently from Stanford on the future of work. They are typically free. If you want an employee to get a certificate of completion, usually that's less than $100. Most of the time it's like $49 or $59, but it's an opportunity for an employee to take a course. They can take it from a major university and they can get credit. It involves videos and reading and quizzes and discussions. If you've not taken a MOOC in the past, this might be something that you want to consider, just so that you can see what they're like. But the dialogue, the diversity of thought is fantastic and would be very eye-opening to anyone who is looking to expand their horizons in a particular subject matter. Another area to consider when we're talking about learning is not to remove the employee from the process. I think that self-directed learning has a place in upskilling, and when we're talking about self-directed learning, I think it's important to recognize the fact that employees need to be educated on how to do this. You just can't look at an employee and say, poof, you're self-learning now. I don't think it works that way. So one of the things that we need to do as an organization is make sure that we're comfortable that employees know their preferred learning style. I think a lot of employees do. You might hear employees mention, I'm a visual learner, or I'm a hands-on learner. So I think that they have some sense of how they like to learn things. But the key to me is, do they know how to identify what they need to learn? Do they know how to evaluate their own skills? So often we rely upon a manager to tell us, Charlene, you need to get better at X. Charlene, you need to learn X. Can employees evaluate their own skills and be in a position where they can say, I need to learn this to be better at my job, and this is how I would like to learn it? And then
I was going to
create
say,
that
really
create
quick
that learning plan.
really quick question on that is, where do you see kind of the main driver for those kind of new future ready paths being, we talked about self-directed learning and educational partnerships here. Do you see the organizations being the ones that are driving more of this, or do you see kind of the individual employee kind of taking more of that ownership for themselves and bringing it to the organization, raising their hand and saying, hey, I want to learn new skills, but I need your help, or I'm going to go do this on my own?
I think it's a little bit of both. And the only reason I say that, I know that's a very non-committal response, but the reason I say that is because I think employees would do more of the, I would like to do this, if they feel that their manager and the organization is receptive to it. So as organizations get better about openly talking about upskilling and reskilling and employees' performance in their future, I think employees will know, I can go to my boss and I can say, this is what I need to learn, or this is what I would like to learn. Here's a plan. Help me accomplish that goal. But, if I work someplace where I don't believe my manager is open to that conversation, then I might keep that to myself. Um, so organizations are going to have to be a little bit more open where the conversation is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, that kind of leads us to the last part. And, when you're talking about um, being more open to the conversation, especially when you have new employees, maybe having a buddy system, or if you have an individual who's moving to a new department or a new division in the organization, having someone, a buddy, that can help you initially navigate around the workplace, that can be very helpful. Even, as we talk now about remote work and hybrid work, if I'm a first-time employee working from home, gosh, wouldn't it be fantastic if you had someone who's a buddy that can maybe help you a little bit get indoctrinated to working from home, or what it means to work remotely and how you get things done in this kind of environment? I understand that a year ago, when we all started, sheltering in place, we had to figure some things out on our own. Companies had to make some snap decisions, and that's cool. we're not going to go back and, back in time. But now, as organizations are making intentional decisions, we're going to have remote work, we're going to be a hybrid workplace. Are there some opportunities to put buddy systems in place that will allow employees to get the information that they need, get the learning that they need at the time that they need it? We can also talk about coaching, and coaching being that time when, let me describe a coach. Coaches to me are trained individuals who can help employees find their own answers. Coaches aren't necessarily people that tell other people what to do, but instead, through questions and conversations, they help employees get to the place where they have their own answers. And then finally, creating some opportunities for employees to learn directly on the job. That moves us to reskilling. And reskilling it's different, but then on some levels, you'll see some commonalities or some common threads, but how we go about implementing these learning activities might be a little bit different. Some reskilling approaches include job rotation, career pathing, coaching and mentoring, special projects, and blended learning. The first one I want to talk about is job rotation. To me, job rotation is when we help employees learn about the operation and the organization by giving them assignments in different areas. Like, for example, I used to work in the hotel industry, and in the hotel industry, we wanted general managers to learn about all the different components of running a hotel. So we wanted them to learn about food and beverage, and we wanted them to learn about housekeeping, and we wanted them to learn about the front desk. So they would rotate through all of those different areas. Might do the same thing in terms of HR. I want an HR pro to learn about recruitment and comp and learning. And so all of those different things. When we have employees rotate through different assigned jobs, this increases their skills. It creates a sense of engagement, especially if you have employees who have a low tolerance for boredom. You might have employees who are always looking for new things. This gives them the ability to learn lots of different stuff about the organization. And when you have employees who have been through some level of job rotation, it can also be very helpful, because as those individuals spend time making decisions, solving problems, they're going to have a much more holistic approach to answering things in the company, because they have all of those different perspectives. Career paths are another form of reskilling, and we can follow a traditional career path. Maybe you have generalists in your organization that you would like for them to be a specialist for a while. Maybe you have specialists in the organization that it would be helpful for them to spend time being a generalist. We can also look at certain positions in the company and think about it from a career pathing perspective. Engineering or technical positions to me are probably the most common forms of roles that have dual career paths, excuse me. So for example, an engineer can become more senior where their technical abilities are concerned, or they can choose a path of where maybe they then manage the process or manage the department. When we're thinking about reskilling, we'll want to think about the organization's needs in terms of these career paths And we'll want to think about what employees are wanting to do where their career is concerned. A great example is I know engineers who say, you know what, I love being an engineer. I do not want to be the director of engineering. So we'll want to keep that in mind as well. And then that actually plays into the development of programs that the organization might create. So let's say, for example, we have a lot of individuals who might want to move from an engineering role into a management role. We might want to think about creating management and leadership development programs. Or we might have a lot of individuals that are generalist and we'd like for them to become specialist. And maybe there are some technical skill development programs that we need to create.
So, quick question for you
Uh,
is, do you see there becoming more of a preference towards people having more specialized skills or remaining more generalists? Does the size of the organization matter? Do you see any trends there?
the trend that I see most often is that there seems to be this back and forth between, you hear sometimes influencers will say, oh, everybody needs to be a generalist. And then, a couple of years later, you'll hear, oh, everybody needs to be a specialist. I will say, as somebody who has been both a generalist and a specialist, if you ever get the opportunity, like if you're a specialist right now, if you ever get the opportunity to be a generalist for a little while, you might want to check it out and get that experience. I think the experience is really valuable. And if you decide then you want to go back to being a specialist, you'll be a better specialist because you spent that time doing a little bit of something else. The same applies if you are a generalist. If you're a generalist right now and you have the opportunity to go be a specialist for a while, I would suggest really thinking hard about whether or not you want to do that, because that can make you a better generalist. Uh, so I hate to say, it depends, but I would definitely say if you can gain that experience, that could be very valuable. And that's what the organization is looking for. I mean, that's what you're looking for when you think about managing your career. And that's what the organization is looking for ultimately when you're talking about reskilling, because employees come to their position with greater experience to draw from.
And overall, just kind of, that's being a chameleon in some ways, and just wanting to learn new skills keeps building a resilient workforce and you as a resilient employee, it sounds like.
Exactly. While we're talking about resilience, let's do this poll. We're going to talk about mentoring programs.
All right.
Does your organization currently have a mentoring program? And you can say yes, and it's been really valuable. Yes, but maybe it's only for management positions. No, but you're considering implementing a mentoring program. And then finally, no, maybe for whatever reason you haven't been able to sell it to the management team. I think that one of the things that's great about a mentoring program, and often when we talk about mentoring programs, we're focused on the mentee, the person who's receiving the guidance in a mentoring program. But I have heard from so many people that being a mentor was a fantastic professional development activity. So this is one of those things where not only do mentees benefit, but mentors benefit.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to go ahead and close it out. Some really interesting results here. We'll share those.
Oh, okay. So the majority of individuals have not implemented a mentoring program, but maybe they want to consider it possibly. Let's talk a little bit more about mentoring programs and especially how they relate to coaching programs. We talked about coaching when we were in the upskilling section, and coaching is about that individual who can help an employee find answers. Mentoring is a little bit different. This is an individual who can provide an employee with answers. Sometimes in an organization, we might be looking for a mentor to help us think through career advice, help us maneuver the organization politically. But mentors can provide valuable information to mentees to help them be more resilient, make some decisions regarding their career, and perform better.
Do you think mentoring is something that happens? Maybe, a lot of people said that that's not something that they have, although they'd like to. Do you think it's something that maybe just happens more organically than as a part of a formal program? Um,
I do think a lot of organizations could have informal mentor programs where maybe an employee has on their own said, I would really like to have a mentor. Maybe they've identified somebody in the organization and asked them privately, would you consider being my mentor? That being said, the organization, if you know just casually that that's going on a lot, is there value to formalizing the program?
yeah, thinking back early in my career, I would have loved to figure out how to better identify different mentors that I'd had. A lot of times it just happened to be, my manager, and we formed that relationship. It was never really formalized, but I think it could be a really useful tool to those, especially early in their career, to kind of understand the steps on how to do that. What do you look for in a mentor?
Exactly. And this is also an opportunity that if the organization wanted to have a formal mentoring program, do you want to do something in terms of giving training to mentors and support to mentors? Do you want to create cross department mentoring? So, Jana, you talked about, hey, having that mentoring relationship with my boss. Is it possible that, not that my boss isn't a great person, but is it possible that the mentoring piece would even be stronger if I mentored with someone in a different department? And that kind of leads us to the notion of special projects. A lot of companies at this point are using special projects as a way for people to gain experience. Maybe they're, asking employees to be a part of a task force or a project team, or maybe asking them if they'll be on a committee to do certain things. Special projects do a couple of things. One, they allow people to learn new skills. They allow people to work as a member of a team, maybe improve their collaborative abilities. But the thing that I love most about special projects is it allows me to build new relationships in the organization. So if you don't have a mentoring program right now, but you have employees out there working on special projects, is this an opportunity for them to get exposure to new people and new situations that will help them in their career? And then finally, the last area of reskilling I want to talk about has to do with blended or online learning. One of the things that I love about this, and we talked about micro learning, where we're talking about here might be something that's a little bit longer in content. It could be in person or online, it could be live or on demand. But it's location independent. If you're working with a global team right now, this is a great opportunity to create content that the team can participate, and interact with. And it's a great opportunity to tap into your subject matter experts around the organization. I know just from a logistical perspective, as a human resources professional, there were people that if I wanted to get them to address a group of employees, it was so difficult to get on their schedule. They were just people who were booked all the time. And one of the great things about this kind of format is I can go and say, would you record a webinar with me? Would you record a podcast with me? And we could record it. I can put this in a resource center and employees can listen to it on demand. So this subject matter expert is contributing to the organization. The employees are getting the benefit of that person's expertise. And the logistical part is just a little bit easier. So think about those individuals in your company that you would love to tap into their wisdom, but it's really hard to get on their schedule. And does something like blended learning, online learning become ideal?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of intranets become very useful for that too. Kind of talking about special projects and job rotation is when you've got the intranet and have access to other departments and other functions. That's kind of a great way to go in and explore different areas of those functions as well.
And as we talk about the resiliency of the organization, the more exposure that employees get to the different facets of the organization, the stronger they become, the more they understand about the operation, and the better position that they're in to contribute because they know more than just the department that they work in or just that one job that they're working at. So quickly to recap, we talked about upskilling and reskilling. And in the area of upskilling, looking at things like apprenticeships and microlearning, self-directed opportunities, buddies and coaching, educational partnerships as a way to upskill employees in their current roles. Reskilling can happen via job rotation, different career paths, mentoring, coaching, creating special projects, and blended and online learning. Now, Jana and I in our time together have mentioned the word technology more than once. So there's a role for technology to play in building a resilient workforce with upskilling and reskilling. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jana to talk a little bit about what that role might look like.
Yeah, and we've obviously mentioned a lot about technology and the tools that you have and, digital transformation and automation changing a lot of things. But I think there's going to be a really interesting harmony between a few different types of technology that are really going to propel forward a lot of this in the area of kind of talent management and upskilling and reskilling. And the first is business intelligence, which has been around for a long time, right? Your performance of overall performance metrics, all that fun stuff within the company. But then you've got this new emerging category called talent intelligence and how you're applying a lot of the things that are going on with business intelligence and tracking that. And how do you apply that to the human aspect? And then there's the performance management, tracking very specific performance of the individual versus the business. And we see talent intelligence kind of as the bridge of that. So obviously with your business intelligence, you're really looking at the overall performance of the business as a whole, right? This kind of helps you figure out where do you need to go for the future? What are some of the skills that you need, product launches that you might be needing? And a lot of organizations have data science teams internally that are solely focused on this business intelligence and these business metrics and tracking them, everything from the clicks on your website to, the revenue and cost per lead and all of those things that might be going on, or cost per acquisition or your customer acquisition costs, all of that. But that kind of helps paint the picture of, okay, where do we need to take things forward? What it is that we need to focus on? But then you're really looking at talent intelligence, and talent intelligence has been able to take a lot of the unstructured talent data, because for a long time I would say HR was a little bit lacking in some of the enabling technologies that allowed us to kind of plot out and really get actionable insights on the various skills, people, who to hire for what roles, where to locate things. And talent intelligence has been able to kind of bring chaos to that structure and bring the pieces together to help you figure out, okay, we know where our workforce plan is, but how do we get there? How do we inform our talent acquisition strategy? Do we need to get new pipeline coming in? Do we need to reskill and upskill? And who should we be reskilling and upskilling to fill those gaps? Is it something we need to be outsourcing? Where do we find that talent? All of that. So talent intelligence has kind of come in to breathe that bridge. And then you start, it's mapping all of those points, adding the context that you need to get the actionable intelligence, and then delivering those continuous insights so you can stay on top of things. We've talked a lot about evolution and kind of continuous innovation. So it's not really a one and done kind of thing. Like I mentioned, where do you find that talent? Roles that have maybe been vacant for a really long time. Do you need to start looking more internally for that internal mobility or reskilling opportunities? And there's a lot of benefits there. And then on your performance management side, right, looking at the individual, this is something that we've seen legacy be done, maybe annual reviews, very informally, or not informally, but between a manager, and now you're starting to see it become a bit more data driven, defining very specific skills, developing career intelligence, those learning and development paths that we discussed. Technology is really starting to come into play there, where people can take assessments, help, get that guidance on what are the skills that I need for the future, where do I want to be, take a little bit more control as the employee. We mentioned the AT&T case study earlier, and the employees were really able to identify and train for the jobs that the company would need in the future. So it's creating that flywheel effect of, okay, you've got the business intelligence that's kind of telling you where the company needs to go, and that's going to inform your workforce plan. That talent intelligence is going to help you figure out in your talent acquisition, and then you're going into optimizing those individual employees' performance so that you then improve the business metrics and so on and so forth. So you're going to see technology starting to really take a much bigger role in all of this and the KPI tracking, and turn it from what has kind of been a bit of a subjective process previously to a very data-driven process with a lot of historical evidence behind it, so you can really develop concrete plans and get people and organizations where they want to be.
I'm really glad that you started talking about performance, because I think that all organizations are focused on performance. I'm not talking about the performance review. I'm talking about organizations just in general are focused on how to perform. How do we deliver the best products and services to our customers? And that's where this conversation really comes full circle. When we're talking about performance, the performance of the organization, it really comes down to, do we have the right people? Are they doing the right things? And as we look at the future of our business, do we have that pipeline plan together so that individuals will have the skills to perform at a high level as our business evolves? So just to do a quick wrap up before we open it up to a Q&A, key takeaways: employees can use upskilling and reskilling. They can, participate in upskilling and reskilling to perform at a high level. Organizations are going to want to identify those opportunities. We've talked about 10 of them today. It's possible that it might be some creative inspiration for something you're already happening in the organization. You might turn around and say, oh gosh, I'm not sure that, this one really fits our company culture. But the idea is to create those opportunities. Look at your existing learning activities and see where you might be able to incorporate upskilling and reskilling. Partner with external organizations where appropriate. get feedback at every level of the organization. When we're talking about learning, we want not just the management team, but we want employees to buy into upskilling and reskilling as well. So think about it at every level of the organization, and then be prepared to regularly update the program as your business needs change. I'd love to say that this is a one and done, upskill everybody or we'll reskill everybody, and then we're dead. But it's not the case. There's always going to be something new from a technology perspective, from a business perspective, that's going to allow us to continuously update the program.
Awesome. And we're coming to the top of the hour right now, so we don't have very much time for additional questions. But I've asked a couple kind of throughout that came through. So I'll kind of leave it with this is thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Charlene. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I hope everybody listening and watching has as well. So for everybody that has registered or attended, we would love to offer you, we actually at Sensia, we published an ebook about the future of talent using upskilling and reskilling to optimize talent, meeting those business goals, and reducing talent costs overall, because we didn't even get a touch on the cost benefits of reskilling existing employees as well, but we'll share that with you. And if you do have any additional questions, we would love to address those. Please feel free to shoot me an email directly at glass@sensia.com. You can visit us on our website at sensia.com. And I encourage everybody to check out, if you are not familiar, please check out HR Bartender. It's a publication I love to read. And so thank you very much, Charlene. We really appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for having me, Jana.